Shalom, good evening, and have a nice day. So, our meditation for today is that you need to love yourself first before you love your brothers and sisters. Why? Because you need to have a basis of how you love and when will you share that, right? Because if you don't love yourself, then how would you know how to love, right? Therefore, start first with yourself, right? This is the book of 2 Corinthians chapter 13 and verse 5. Examine yourselves, whether ye be in the faith, prove your own selves. Know ye not your own selves how that Yahushua is in you, except ye be reprobates? I repeat that again. Examine yourselves, right? Let's go to it's the book of Galatians chapter 6 and verse 5. For every man shall bear his own burden, right? His own burden. Burden is weight or heaviness, is a heavy load, physical duty or emotional responsibility that is difficult to bear, right? It is something that you are what? Carrying, right? How can you carry another man's burden if your burden is still heavy, right? There's nothing wrong with helping another brother. That's the law. You must love your neighbor as yourself. But how can you love your neighbor if you don't love yourself, right? You need that primary basis or that primary practice, right? Which is first loving yourself by managing your burdens, right? Because our burdens will not completely yet disappear, right? Because he that endureth to the end shall be saved, because we have to endure it to the end, right? Therefore, our primary thing first is to balance or minimize our burden, right? And that's loving yourself, right? By first what? Keeping the law, right? Because the law is life. This is the book of Deuteronomy chapter 30 and verse 16. In that I command thee this day to love the Lord thy God, to walk in his ways, and to keep his commandments, and his statutes, and his judgments, that thou mayest what? Live. I repeat, that thou mayest live and multiply, right? That's why you have to practice first the law, right? Because every day the flesh and the spirit will battle itself, right? Therefore, increase in being spiritual, right? Because the law is spiritual. For we know that the law is spiritual, but this is the book of Romans chapter 7 and verse 14. For we know that the law is spiritual, but I am carnal, sold under sin, right? We have to be spiritual in this thing, right? By taking care of yourself first, then afterwards share each other's burden, right? How do you manage that burden? By nurturing it, right? By how? This is the book of Ephesians chapter 5 and verse 26, that he might what? Sanctify and cleanse it with the washing of water by the word. Remember, we are like plants or soils, right? Paul watered and Apollos planted, right? So it's the same thing. Therefore, we can manage by reducing that burden by being spiritual and by washing of water by the word, right? Therefore, read daily, right? Be spiritual daily. Therefore, to be worthy is to be spiritual, right? To be scriptural is to be spiritual, right? Remember those things, right? So that you can manage your burden. Because after you examine and balance your burdens, it is now more easy to endure it to the end, right? Afterwards, you can then share your burdens, right? You can share your brother's burden with you. This is the book of Leviticus chapter 19 and verse 17. Thou shalt not hate thy brother in thine heart. Thou shalt in any wise rebuke thy brother. Next verse. Thou shalt not avenge nor bear any grudge against the children of thy people, but thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself, right? So first love yourself, and then you can love your brothers and sisters, right? But at the end of the day, all praises to the Most High, Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai. This is our daily meditations for the day, that we may be reminded daily through repetition and practice, right? For faith is a practice, for faith is a workout, right? Therefore, work it out, that we may endure it at the end, right? And be saved. All praises to the Most High, Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Tawada.